Welcome in. Hail to the podcast brought to you by Maize and Blue Review. We cover Michigan for the Rivals Network, which means you can find us at michigan.rivals.com. Coming to you after another Michigan victory that, per Sharon Moore, was not satisfying. Again, another tale of two halves, if you will. Lots to talk about. Some positives, some things trending in the right way. Everybody probably felt really good at halftime. And then again, another late sweat. Minnesota is not the opponent that USC was as well. So still some anxiety in this fan base, still some things to talk about. Where are we going? What can we need to change? Blah, blah, blah. We're going to try and bring Brock in here. Brock, can you hear us?
I can hear you guys.
Hey, we're good. All right. We were having some technical difficulties to get started. So Brock, since I'm talking to you first, we'll go out of order here. Welcome. I am loving the Rose Bowl shirt because anything Rose Bowl merch is fantastic. But hey, gross day on Saturday weather-wise, and then kind of a gross finish as well.
Yeah, it was a weird day, a weird game. The vibes weren't really there. It wasn't anything like what fans saw for the Texas game or the USC game. It was kind of, everyone's always excited to be at Michigan Stadium, but the energy just wasn't really there. And obviously the team got out to a great start, but then it kind of fell apart there late. And it wasn't the most picturesque day in Ann Arbor, I wouldn't say at all.
So Josh Henschke, Intel Insider Publisher, joining us, of course, as well. I'm torn between what is, and we'll obviously get into this a lot throughout the show. I'm torn between what is a familiarity that I think people are forgetting about, which is a lot of these Michigan games are frustrating, right? 21, 22, 23. It was like, how many times were we really like, man, we just want this team to dominate and this was closer than it should have been and blah, blah, blah. But also this year's different, right? This isn't the same players. This is, we were expecting to see what we were going to see, right? Like out the gate in terms of what the identity of this Sharon Moore program was going to be. And right now we still kind of feel like, and again, some positives we'll talk about. I think it's less to do with Michigan being 4-1 and more to do with what people think is coming. And will this translate to future games?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you have to kind of think down the line at this point. I mean, the schedule's not getting easier. Teams like Indiana and Illinois may or may not be what we thought they were heading into the year. Most cases, they're probably better, particularly Illinois being a lot better than we thought they would be. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of this is kind of projecting and kind of prognosticating down the line about whether this can be sustainable, and in a way it really can be, outside of maybe the two big games that are left on the schedule in Oregon and Ohio State. I mean, I think all of these teams kind of play similar styles, in Michigan can kind of, and especially defensively. I mean, I think that Illinois game is going to be a rushing game anyway, because I think that's just the way both teams like to play regardless. So, yeah, I mean, look, a lot of this is looking down the line, and can it be sustainable? I guess. I'd like to see some baby steps being taken in terms of growth, and I think we've seen that the last couple of weeks. But yeah, I mean, as far as the here and now, yeah, people are gonna care about the here and now and what Michigan's doing, and they're 4-1, and that's obviously good and about where we thought they would be, at this point of the year. I mean, say what you will about Texas, but yeah, I mean, there's things to like and obviously things to clean up. So when you're looking at that, and at the same time you're winning games, I think that's, I think you'd like where they're at. I mean, obviously not satisfied fully, but again, it winning kind of cures a lot of the ills here, and they just got to keep doing that. They just got to be able to find a way. They found a way last week, found a way this week. So they just got to keep doing that somehow, some way. I mean, that's what good teams do. They find ways to win despite of their own, their own issues, their own struggles. So they just got to keep doing that. It doesn't matter who the opponent is. And, the road doesn't get easier from here. I mean, road test this week will really kind of I was thinking really kind of tell what kind of program this is going to be moving forward, with this. It's not going to be a fun atmosphere at Washington. I mean, that's a beautiful stadium, really good crowd. That's going to be a good game. So, yeah, I mean, a lot to like, a lot to dislike, but hey, 4-1, that's the ultimate stat right now, and you definitely take it.
Especially with that loss being to, well, I guess they're now the number 2 team in the country.
Yeah.
Texas, Bama jumping after that really, really fun
Bama
Georgia game.
Yeah.
I love watching a great game where I don't care who wins.
Yep.
Because it's like, don't have to take interest or whatever. But Brock, I'm going to take kind of a devil's advocate position. I mean, I feel like I'm going to be more positive than you anyway, just because that's how it tends to go. But I think about Michigan in 2022 and the close game they had against Illinois, dealing with some injuries, including Blake Corum, obviously halfway through that game. But I think about 23, Maryland, another close game dealing with some injuries. And I think about games all the time in the Harbaugh era where, like, we kept hearing, well, he could have played. We decided, the precautionary thing, the Will Johnson thing was always hilarious to me from last week. Like, well, he could have played if we needed him. USC driving down 3, you didn't need what? What are you talking about? So whatever.
Yeah.
My point is looking at this Minnesota game, and I think, okay, I don't have not just my best pass rusher in Josiah Stewart, but technically the best player defensively in college football right now, according to analytic metrics. I don't have Will Johnson, the best cornerback in college football. I have a banged up Colston Loveland who only played, I think, 14 or 15 snaps. I don't have Samaj Morgan. I lose my left tackle, who's been my best offensive lineman partway through the game. Hey, I'm okay that I got a close win against Minnesota. These are games I've barely won in the past where, hey, guess what? We said you're going to need a field goal kicker. Good thing you went and got Zavada. I can't remember which way it is. That field goal he kicks late in the fourth quarter ends up being the difference maker. As hard as I'm trying to take that angle, though, they came out. They did a lot of positive things in the first half. Orji throws that pick, and it's like, here we go. Ultra conservative offense. Defense gives up 3 touchdowns. Like I said, I'm trying to take this angle of, look, you had injuries and blah, blah, blah. But what happened in this game also happened in USC, Arkansas State, Fresno State.
Yeah, you can look at it both ways, really. And I can understand the people that are optimistic. I'm a little more optimistic than I think a lot of people are. But I can also understand the pessimistic people that are really concerned, beating Minnesota by 3 at home. And I can understand both ways of thinking. You've got a team that, like you said, Trevor, they're missing a lot of their best players. Josiah Stewart, best pass rusher. Will Johnson, obviously one of the best players in college football. No Samaj Morgan. It was pretty similar against USC last week. Michigan was without Colston Loveland. Donovan Edwards left the game, or not Donovan Edwards, I'm sorry. Will Johnson was in the X-ray room. They didn't have pieces, right? And I don't care what anyone says. That's what good teams do is even though you may not have your best players on the field, they found a way to win. Good teams find ways to win even when it's not easy. And that's what Michigan did so many times last season, was just find ways to win. Obviously, a lot of the games weren't as close as what is playing out this season. But good teams find ways to win. And that's what Michigan's done. I can understand that people are a little pessimistic about, hey, beating Minnesota by 3 at home isn't okay. But and you could argue it's not. You could argue that giving up 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter is not okay. And right. I think that's a fair point. It's a weird conundrum where, Michigan's without its best players, but they still won. They're 4-1, and that's what matters. But there's also another way of thinking where it's like, okay, what's going on in the second half where Michigan's being outscored 57-26 over the last 3 games, right? It's
Well, we were
It's a
spoiled
weird,
with the Jesse Minter third quarters last year, right? So it's like
right,
complete different ends of the spectrum there too.
right. And so I can understand where, where fans are getting upset. But when you look at it in the grand scheme of things, this team is 4-1 heading into a game against an unranked Washington team, and really not a huge, I wouldn't say a really, really big threat on the schedule until Oregon. Obviously, like Josh mentioned, Illinois is probably a little better than a lot of people suspected. Michigan State could pose a threat maybe, but I wouldn't say there's a big time game on the schedule until Oregon. And if Michigan takes care of business and goes out there and just repeats this process of winning, but even if it's ugly, I don't see any reason why this team isn't 7-1 going into the Oregon game.
Yeah.
Josh, I mean, you obviously have your own point, but just real quick to Brock's point, we just said no Will Johnson, no Josiah Stewart, right? The two highest grade players against Minnesota on defense, Jair Hill replacing Will Johnson, TJ Guy replacing Josiah Stewart. So two guys who've been, I mean, obviously Hill's your starting CB2. A lot of negative things were said about him early. He's gotten better every week. Had a great game, one of the best interceptions we've seen in the last few years. And TJ Guy had himself a day as well. So, hey, two guys stepped up. That's what you ask for. But again, those 3 touchdowns, it's just tough, man. And again, I think, Brock, I think if we looked at this game in a box, just this game, the angle you and I are taking makes a lot of sense, but people are thinking about those previous games too, right? I mean, that's got to be playing into it. But yeah, Josh, what were you going to say? Sorry.
Yeah, no, I'll also add Rayshon Benny in that mix too.
Yeah.
I think he did really well in absence. I mean, he's obviously more of an interior guy, but I think he did pretty well stepping up with, when Minnesota went tempo, that's kind of when it all felt. Well, no, I'll say when the hands to the face penalty is kind of when it all felt. That, I mean, say what you will, whether it was a hands in the face or not.
It wasn't.
That was the point that cost Michigan points there, and that really kind of opened the floodgates a little bit into Michigan struggles.
The Orji interception, if it's a touchdown, which it should have been, and we'll get to that when we talk more about offense, you're 31-3 halfway through the third quarter. You're in blowout territory. And then the 4th down stop getting taken away for the hands to the face. I know it's easy to go if then or, but with games like that. But man, those 2 plays massively changed the trajectory.
And you also had a legitimate gripe to that Hail Mary that was caught on the 2-yard line too. I mean, that one looked like that hit the ground. But anyway, either way, it's neither here nor there. I mean, look, it's sometimes you gotta win dirty. And there is really no excuse that Minnesota got back in this game. I mean, the second Minnesota went tempo, that was game over. I mean, the blueprint, at least from this year, has been, and Joel Klatt said this during the broadcast, is kind of getting Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant going sideline to sideline and running tempo. And, that's kind of the big 2 ingredients there to really upset Michigan's defense and kind of get them off kilter a little bit, which is why building depth is so important. So it's also good at the same time that you're getting valuable reps for a TJ Guy or a Rayshon Benny. Even Ike Iwunnah got like 13 snaps in the game as well too. So, I mean, look, it's just growing pains. It's growing pains. It's a young team. It's going to get younger next year when all these big guys are leaving, the Will Johnsons, the Kenneth Grant. So I mean, maybe Kenneth Grant leaves, maybe he doesn't, but Mason Graham for sure. Loveland, Will Johnson. Look, this team's only going to get younger, so you need to play as many guys that you can play as possible. And that's kind of the situation now that you're seeing, is that these guys are kind of learning on the fly. Very valuable reps, I might add, but you got to take the good with the bad at this point. And the second half was pretty bad, but you take the good with the win. So, I mean, again, just like last week, I mean, there's going to be a lot to a lot they're going to not like on film, but I think compared to last week, I think there's a lot more good on film
Well, and the
than
bad still feels correctable.
well, yeah. I mean,
Right?
I think the playing field gets leveled for Michigan if they can do two things. They can stop the turnovers and they can stop these dumb penalties, the
Mhm.
discipline stuff. You're if you're handing teams, in some cases earlier in the year, 2 or 3 extra possessions a game, you're not doing yourself any favors at all. So, um, look, if they can at least cut down on the turnovers and the discipline on both sides of the ball, they're going to be in a better spot than they were before. I mean, turnovers are inevitable. Yes, it's going to happen, but you can't have one every single game of the year. You just can't do it. You got to play a clean game to give your offense and defense a shot. You
Yeah.
got to do it. So, yeah, you're 100% correct. A lot of it is correctable. Like the wholesale stuff, probably you won't be able to fix it during the season, but the little things you can fix, and you at least give yourself a shot to play better as the season goes on. Even with Orgy too, then I guess we'll talk about later on in the show, but like the decisions, the going through the reads and stuff, you can fix that during the season. The whole big picture thing you probably won't see get fixed, but you're right. It is all a lot of it, the good majority of it is correctable stuff. And that's on a young and new staff to correct it. That's on them to do it. So can they do it? We'll see. I mean, we've seen stuff addressed or at least attempted to be addressed. So at least these guys got to get the benefit of the doubt right now. And kind of see what happens from there, I guess.
Yeah, Brock, specifically the angle I'm going and what Josh is talking about, I was very critical of Wink early on, especially in the Texas game. I thought the exotic looks were unnecessary. I thought Mason Graham on the edge 14 times was ridiculous. I think you were trying too hard to trick your opponent and instead tricking yourselves.
Yeah.
He obviously basically told people like me to shut the hell up at his press conference this week, which whatever, props to you. His argument about blitz rate and if you're sending four, it's the same thing. I disagree. I think if I'm replacing Josiah Stewart or Derek Moore with Quentin Johnson, and I have data that shows that that's less successful than my base set, I'm going to talk about that. Like that's just data that exists and how I feel. Right. But since Texas, we've seen a lot more base set, your standard defensive line, the linebackers. It feels like you've been asking them to do a little bit less. People forget Colson and Barrett were getting picked on, and we're having a lot of the same issues at the first half of 2022 really came along in the second half. And obviously we're absolute studs in 23, starting to see a little bit of that development. The linebackers, the secondary, I mean, the touchdowns they're allowing are just like a foreign language to us with guys blitzing when they're not supposed to. And all these every touchdown they've given up. I shouldn't say everyone, the Minnesota, this game, the back half of the end zone, dude, you make a catch like that, dude made a play.
Yep.
You made a play, right? But when you're shooting yourself in the foot, it's like, oh, what are you doing? That's frustrating. Now, like some of the communication stuff and some of these things feel coachable. Real quick, though, sorry, I should have talked about this first. Somebody asked about my hat, and I'm kind of a loser about this. It is a Detroit Tigers hat, specifically a logo they used for only 3 years. 1957 to 1960, and then it was in the middle here for a couple of years as well. But yeah, Tigers in the playoffs. Let's go. But anyway, yes, my frustration with Wink. Look, he's not going to come in and literally be Jesse Minter. We knew that wasn't possible. I didn't want the full-on experience of what we saw in the NFL. I feel like we're kind of finding a happy medium now. Look, these late touchdowns are concerning. They got to go away. I feel a lot better about where he's going, though. I like the formations. I like the play calling. I think this team can get better, especially if they get healthy.
Yeah, healthy is the big part for sure.
Yeah, and I agree, but like I said earlier, there is quite a bit of concern with what's going on in these second halves. I mean, Michigan's pretty much getting exposed in the second half. And if it wasn't for
Yeah.
big leads that they built up in each of the last 3 games in the first half, who knows what their record would be right now. And, you mentioned these breakdowns that lead to touchdowns. Obviously, Daniel Jackson made a great play there in the end zone for Minnesota on Saturday.
Catch. That was a great catch.
Yeah,
Yeah, at what point, like, and also at the same time, like, at what point do you just say, all right, tip your cap? That was just a great play.
Yeah.
Players make plays, dude. Fine.
Yeah.
Like that was a great play. But then you look at the touchdown that Michigan gave up against USC, where I think it was Zeke Berry came on an all-out blitz, and Miller Moss hit the wide receiver for the most wide open touchdown you'll ever see. Just these weird breakdowns in the defense that no one saw from Jesse Minter's defense last year. Obviously, no one's expecting Wink Martindale to be Jesse Minter or anything like that, like you said, Trevor. But it's concerning, and obviously, Michigan wasn't going to come out here and make adjustments in the second half like they did last year either. Like that was just a completely different level of adjustments and coaching. But it is concerning, and you got to think if there's a game coming up what happens if Michigan doesn't get up by 2 or 3 touchdowns and then they break down in the second half, they're going to end up losing. They would have lost to Minnesota, and they would have lost to USC, quite frankly, if it wasn't for those multiple touchdown leads that they built up. And yeah, it's probably, at least for me personally, the biggest area of concern is what's going on in the second half.
Yeah, Michigan lower 12 here was a really good point too. I mean, if the offense can't stay on the field, it's hard to blame defense later on in the game.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, yeah, if you're not sustaining drives, you're going in with a gas defense, and yeah, that's why tempo is probably partially to partially working too. So it's like as I explained it on the message board to one of our subscribers, it's like a Venn diagram of stuff that you can blame that kind of intertwines with everything. There's like offense, defense, and then everything in between the Venn diagram, and a lot of crossover happens there. So everyone needs to get better. I mean, it's not just a defense issue. It's not just an offense issue. It's not just a special teams issue. Everyone needs to get better. Players, coaches, scheme, everything needs to be better. And, the argument is, and I'm not calling out Borge here just to, because he brings up the point I'm trying to make here. You need depth and defense for being on field longer. Yeah. And you also need to play guys that, are kind of susceptible to giving up big plays because they don't, they haven't figured it out yet.
Well, to your point about the offense, they're going up against way more plays this year than they did in previous years.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the offense isn't staying on the field. I want to say this real quick about the positive, the defense, and then I do want to hammer on this point again, what we're talking about. But just positives, 23 pressures, second straight game with over 20. TJ Guy, 6. Grant, 4. Derek Moore, 4. Moore got his first sack. We were saying Moore and Stewart's numbers have been really similar in terms of win weight and pressure, but Stewart's been getting the sacks. That edge duo was just absolutely nasty. Mason Graham had himself a day, 3 pressures, 2 sacks. All of these guys have ridiculous win rates. They're beating their blocks 20% of the time in less than 2 seconds. Awesome. 6 total sacks for the team. Listen. So what we were just talking about, listen to these drive charts. And I think this is where even last year where Michigan didn't score, they were sustaining drives or they were getting field goals. Like going into that Washington game, I kept trying to explain to the Washington people, like, you're not going to win and Michigan's going to win comfortably. You think their offense is boring, but that doesn't mean it's bad. It's unbelievably efficient. One of the top 3 efficient offenses in college football. That hasn't been the case this year, right? So first drive of the game, 9 plays, 79 yards, touchdown. After that, 3 plays, 4 plays, right? 4th down, non-conversion. 3 plays, 3 plays. The short touchdown after the turnover. 3 plays, and then 13, they get the field goal, and then 4 in the interception. And then they had another 14-play drive, 58 yards. They got the field goal. But other than that first touchdown drive, multiple 3-and-outs. In Minnesota, on the flip side, The defense is doing everything they can, forcing a punt, 8-play drive, missed field goal, 3-and-out punt, 2-play fumbles, 3-play, 3-and-out, interception. Fine, 10 plays, 77 yards, bend don't break field goal, 3-play punt. So we're going into the fourth quarter, and Minnesota's only had one drive that's more than 8 plays. They only have a field goal, and then their next 3 are touchdowns.
Yep.
And it's at some point they go tempo. The offense hasn't sustained the drive. They're not wasting enough clock. More on the coaching staff here. We can kind of start to bridge the offense a little bit here in terms of like red flags going up. Not even bringing the play clock down to 5 seconds onto that last drive. Like those are little things. Josh, you were talking about the balance. Michigan wasn't like unbelievable at anything last year. They were just really good at all the fundamentals. They ran the ball well. They didn't turn it over. They didn't get penalties. They were sound on defense. They didn't miss tackles. They were good on special teams. And they just played smart, balanced football. They had good clock management. They went for it on 4th down when they should. They punted it when they should. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And now it's like, okay, you're getting penalties you shouldn't. You're turning it over in bad times. You're not sustaining drives. What are you doing with the clock here at the end? Little things like that, Brock. That's the stuff where I'm like, right? That might be more foundational for the year where like, was that Orji who didn't know? If so, he literally has a headset now.
Yeah.
How are you not in his ear, Kurt Campbell? Don't snap the ball till 5 seconds. Right? Stuff like that is where I go, You're not prepared. You're not well coached.
Right. And that's where I think a lot of people have the gripe is I didn't listen to the broadcast. So and I was focused on doing a few other things as that sequence was playing out. And I know Joel Klatt kind of called it out on the broadcast, but it happened twice, right? There was one play where Orji snapped it with 10 or 15 on the clock, and then the very next play or like 2 plays later, it happened again. Yeah, and you could argue like the first time, okay, that's on Alex Orji. It's his second career start at quarterback, and maybe he just doesn't know. He's inexperienced, right? It's part of learning the game. But when it happens again, and I think that's when people start looking at the coaches. Like, why are you not telling him to drain the clock? Like, that's Jim Harbaugh is a guy who Michigan had, and he was experienced. He'd obviously coached at the NFL level. He had been head coaching for forever. And I think that's where, that's where this team is at. It's a first-year head coach, a first-year quarterback, first-year starter quarterback, and Kurt Campbell, who isn't all that experienced either. And I think there are certain points, and yesterday especially in that sequence, where you kind of see those deficiencies coming out and playing on the field.
Yeah, basically in those situations, you got to treat those kids like they're 5. You got to treat them like they're toddlers and be like, just dumb it down for them. Be like, even if they've heard this, even if it's elementary level football knowledge, you got to be like, hey, the clock. I mean, the mic cuts out within 15 seconds left on the clock, but you can get enough in going, hey, run this play clock down until 5 seconds or whatever. I mean, that's part of the conversation that we're trying to have, is that everyone needs to be better. Coaches need to be better. Players need to be better. And you need to, sometimes you have to dumb it down for guys that aren't as experienced. It's not an insult. It's just, sometimes.
To Brock's point, if it happens once, fine.
Right. Exactly.
Nobody said anything the second time.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
It's right. So
no, Boo Boo Man made a good point earlier. He's definitely not talking boo boo for sure. I mean, that's the familiarity and experience is 100 totally right. I mean, they don't have that right now. And so they're learning with each other along the way. But that still doesn't necessarily mean that, there's some simple stuff that they can fix and be better at, basic stuff.
Well, and look, some guys don't care, right? I talked about this last night on Twitter when Bama was out there running plays, and everyone's like, whoa. I'm like, have you not watched Kalen DeBoer before?
Yeah.
He does not care what the clock's at.
Yep.
He is going to treat every drive like he did the first drive of the game. He did it at Washington too. He's not going to go out there and try and drain the clock.
Yeah.
It's just not who he is. That's not who Michigan is. You drain the clock from the opening whistle, right?
Yeah.
You're trying to limit possessions, everything, especially with the victory close. So that felt weird, right? Let's talk about Orji as a player. How do I want to say this? I'm a little frustrated with what I think is some revisionist history talk about what Michigan could or should have done in relation to the transfer portal. I don't want to have this conversation for the 100th time. Even last night when Bama's doing well, oh, we should have hired DeBoer. Dude, he was hired at Bama 2 weeks before Harbaugh even left. Like, I just don't see anything that can be gained from those conversations 5 weeks into a season because none of it's changing. We're here where we are. I do feel comfortable with this coaching staff talking about this offseason. And look, you've got this battle with Orji and Warren, two very different quarterbacks. I remember hearing early on, Brock, we're like, hey, what is your offense? Because it could be completely different with these two, right? And they're like, well, 80% of it's the same Michigan. And then we have these different buckets depending on the quarterback. And then we got closer to the season and it was kind of like, no, it's the same no matter what. It's like, what? And then we framed this entire thing about Orji and what he brings as a runner and the athlete. And oh my God, I mean, I'm just thinking about every show we did talking about leaning into the strength of your tight ends this year and Loveland being a wide receiver and Morris and Morgan being the guys on crossing routes and using Donovan Edwards, all these things we talked about, the strengths of the team. And then none of it happened. And it's like, they're running this like JJ light. What are you guys smiling at?
Just one of the comments there. I just think, I mean, yeah, I'm pretty bad.
Which Trevor said, let's talk about Orji.
Yeah, I'm pretty bad. I'm pretty bad at that. Like, I let my face do the talking. I didn't even mean to do that on purpose, but
guys, let's get into this Orji stuff. Anyway,
oh God,
it felt like they were trying to run a JJ light offense, even with Davis Warren, and even that first week with Alex Orji, and it's like, what? This week, Brock, we saw Kalel Mullings and Donovan Edwards on the field at the exact same time.
Yep.
Multiple times. We saw, I'm just giddy saying this out loud, Mullings and Edwards on the field. Edwards split as a receiver. Loveland as a receiver. The other two receivers, Tyler Morris and Fred Moore, your best receivers. Morgan was hurt in this game, right? Oh my gosh. The first time all year, all your best players were on the field at the same time, right? And it's like, yay, they're doing it, right? Like, okay, I love where this is going. And then I'll just have this playing in the background while it happens. You get the players out there, you make the play call, and Orji throws the interception. Right? So, like, it works, right? Here's Loveland on the post. You've got Edwards with his hands up like he can't believe it. I think that he thought, and we don't have the all 22, so I can't see all of it, but I believe he thinks the safety is going with Morris, which he starts to, and then he turns back. So I think he thought he could just lob an easy throw to Loveland and didn't know the safety was there. I don't know. But here's my thing. I'm glad they did this, and I'm going to grab onto that. I think that's a good thing. And I've got some other stuff we can show or talk about too, but like running the ball with Edwards and Mullings out there at the same time, these kind of plays, some of the short crossers, the touchdown to Morris, having Morris in motion, nice, easy play action bootleg for him. It feels like maybe they're starting to implement some of the things in the offense that I'm a little frustrated on. This is the stuff you should have been doing in fall camp, and now you're doing it in the middle of the season.
Yeah. This was the play.
Go ahead, Brock.
I'll go ahead. This was the play where, I don't know, I guess this is my first time honestly seeing it with the TV copy, but it was just as bad from the press box. I mean, you had your basically two of your best players running wide open down the field, and I guess it took Orji a little too long to process what the defense was doing. I don't know what it was, but
well, if you watch, so right here, he gets like, he looks like he's gonna throw it when the safety is on Morris and he's got Loveland and Edwards, that pressure gets in his face and he has to just kind of reset, throw a little bit of a delay into it. Again, I'm just kind of trying to find benefits, but yeah, Donovan's wide open. Loveland's there.
Yeah.
It's like, it just took him a little too long to deliver. And then when he does, it's a softball right into the coverage. If anything, you want Loveland going the other direction, throwing him more open, right? But
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, like, yeah, I mean, it was a bad throw, but I think the placement was bad because you still had Loveland. He's able to make those catches if you get him on the other shoulder. But again, that's a placement. That's a placement thing, and that's stuff that that you learn through tape. But I mean, yeah, look, I think that was his best throw of the day.
I think that's one of the best plays he's made at Michigan.
Right. This throw right here where he steps up in the pocket, finds his read, and finds the open guy.
Yep.
That was his best throw by far. So there's flashes there, but look, they're not going to be able to wave a magic wand here, and he's going to be this elite throwing quarterback. I mean, he's just going to have to, I mean, either you think he's a long-term option or a temporary Band-Aid until you find a guy who can manage an offense and you can kind of make him go back to what he was as kind of a gadget guy. But he's got flashes there. It's just, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen overnight. I mean, and you just kind of have to, at the end of the day, you got to take the good with the bad at this point. And yeah, there's probably a little more bad than good, but I mean, at least the threat of Orji running kind of gives you an extra dynamic that you wouldn't necessarily have with any other guy. I mean, now you can't talk about, oh yeah, Orji doesn't throw interceptions. Well, there's his first one out of the way, so you can't talk about that anymore. For the most part, they've taken care of the ball on offense, but again, offensive line needs to be better. Receivers need to be better. Running backs need to do Orji a favor and get better at pass blocking. I think this week was much, much more improved than last week. I mean, they had some really bad PFF grades with pass blocking last week. I mean, horrific grades. So, look, again, it goes back to what we were saying earlier, the Venn diagram of stuff. Everyone just needs to be better. And you don't get better by just sitting around and practicing. You get better by playing games. So look, this team is mostly young. But yeah, look, you got to go through the ups and downs with this thing. And yeah, maybe Orji isn't the long-term option beyond this season. But I think he gives Michigan the best chance to win right now, and I'm not even going to talk about Tuttle because who knows, he can't even stay healthy. And, and I think part of I don't want to dive into this too much, but I think part of the portal discussion was that they felt like Tuttle was kind of the portal addition that they needed because they didn't necessarily know they were going to for sure get him back after this year. So I kind of felt like part of me thinks that this program thought, hey, this is kind of our quarterback edition here, Tuttle. They're kind of not technically banking on him being the guy, but at least a guy that, that has experience and that they can rely on. And maybe he does run the offense better. Who knows? He can't stay healthy, and you can't have that at the quarterback spot because we're going to go right back to square one if he gets hurt.
And we're not talking about like he's injury prone. We're talking about the same injury lingering over sustained throwing. So like if he goes out there and has a great game, it doesn't matter. He's not going to be able to practice. He's not. It's just not an option.
Right. AJ, by the way, thank you. I appreciate the comment and your donation. Yes, it is nerve-wracking being a Michigan quarterback.
Well, and look,
it's one of the toughest jobs in this state.
Well, and that's why, like, I came off as like this massive Davis Warren like propagandist or something. My whole argument was, guys, the idea that the QB you haven't seen is the answer is such a surface level take, man. It's not going to fix everything. I knew Orji was going to bring his own set of problems, and it wasn't going to fix because Josh's point, pass pro still an issue. Big thing I was saying against Kirk was like, the JJ Light offense, even JJ, when there was pass protection issues, you were going jumbo, you were bringing in 12 personnel and doing, extra tight ends in line and only letting him have the one passing option, which another thing on that too, guys, he locks on his reads. One, offenses in college football now are doing everything possible to scheme the first read open.
Yeah.
Like that's what they're trying to do, but you can see Orji making progressions. Anyway. So offense, Brock, to Josh's point, there's still pass pro issues. I think those are well known at this point. Greg Crippen didn't play. Again, I don't even care if you think Dom's better. Fine. I just want you to pick one. The back and forth annoys me more than who's better. To their point, the PFF grades are similar. They say they grade similar. I don't care. Pick one. Evan Link's getting better each week. If they think he's the best guy, fine. I'd like to see more calls. Again, Josh's point, the running backs haven't been excellent in pass pro. Like, what can we do to adapt that? Wide receivers. Again, no Samaj Morgan in this one. So I'm thinking, hey, maybe another Fred Moore big game after what happened with Tyler Morris being out the previous week. Nope. Fred Moore still only gets 15 snaps, 1 target. Morris plays 37 snaps, gets 1 for 3. He had the touchdown, but only the 3 targets. Kendrick Bell, again, leads this team in snaps, 40. 3 targets. There isn't a single receiver on this team. Let me pull this up so you guys can see this because it blows my mind. There's not a single receiver on this team right now with more than 70 yards receiving through 5 games in the season.
That's gross.
It's and I'm bringing this up because I hope this looks good on the screen. Yay. I'm bringing this up because somebody brought up the no block, no rock thing. I wanted to see, is that what's happening? Are we just really catering to our blockers here, right? Kendrick Bell, 169 snaps, more than any receiver on the team, right? Also 86 block snaps. So half of them are blocks. That means the other half of his snaps, he's out there as a receiver. He has 6 targets. So if you're playing him that much, throw him the ball. If he's not getting open, why are you playing them that much? And look at the run block grade.
Mm-hmm.
Say what you will about the Pro Football Focus grades. I agree. I think the run block grade is probably the most inconsistent. I'm not a huge fan of it, but all of them are using the same one, whatever. Do I think Samaj Morgan is that much better of a blocker than Bell? I don't. But that's my point. I don't think there's a lot of separation in any of these guys. I've seen Charleston make some big blocks. He's played 104. He's your blocking guy. Look at that. 66% of his snaps are blocking. Peyton O'Leary, 66%. But both of those guys are playing 109, 104 snaps, just a little bit less than Samaj Morgan, who has 18 targets. What in the world are they doing with the receivers? And I put Donovan Edwards on there because his 18 snaps are only pass, not block. So his are different. He's been used in the passing game 18 times. 8 targets, 7 receptions, but only 23 yards because they're all 4 or 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage, a screen with no blockers out front. I don't care who the quarterback is. If they're not scheming receivers open or the receivers themselves can't get open, again, I don't know which problem it is. I'm not going to pretend I know, but it's one of them and neither one is good. These quarterbacks don't stand a chance.
Yeah. And listen, I think it all goes back to the coaching staff. I mean, I remember a couple of weeks ago asking Kendrick Bell I think I talked about this on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. I asked him if he expected to be playing this much because as a true sophomore that was formerly a quarterback, personally, I wasn't. I don't think a lot of people were. I don't think anyone was expecting Kendrick Bell to be leading the wide receiver.
He wasn't even a guy we heard a ton about in the offseason either.
Right.
And I get, look, he's Ronnie Bell's brother. I get the dynamic. He made a good play against Minnesota where he sat in the zone. I'm purely talking about what's in front of us here. He's played more snaps than anybody, and he's not a leading receiver.
Yeah.
Sorry, Brock.
That's all right. He straight up told me he didn't. He did not expect to be playing this much. And I think that's a huge red flag. Like
Yeah, I was shocked too.
I'm not a football guy by any means. Like I'm not a coach or a player or anything like that. But when a player tells you that he straight up was not expecting to be on the field this much, I think that's a huge red flag. And the fact that he's got more snaps through 5 games than Donovan Edwards is mind blowing. And I understand that Edwards is.
Oh God, I didn't even think about that part.
Edwards has taken a little bit of a backseat to Kalel Mullings, which is understandable because Mullings has been so good. But Kendrick Bell, a former quarterback and a true sophomore, is or a second-year player. I can't remember if he redshirted, but he's got 19 more snaps than your senior captain in Donovan Edwards, which I can't explain it. You're right, Trevor. The quarterbacks really, people can complain about the passing game all they want, but the quarterbacks just have no chance of success when I hate to put it this way, but when your receiver core looks like that, the quarterbacks have no hope.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really have much more to add. I mean, yeah, I mean, at what point do people, does the program kind of look inwardly a little bit in terms of, where to go from here if the wide receivers aren't developing as expected? I mean, I'm not going to sit here and call for anyone's heads or anything like that, but I mean,
it's been an issue for a while.
Look at the results.
Yeah.
I mean, I think obviously Cornelius Johnson, Roman Wilson were just NFL caliber studs. At what point do you just say, hey, the development isn't there? The stats sure as hell aren't there. I mean, the results aren't there. At what point? Well, you just kind of look inwardly and be like, hey, we gotta figure this out.
And I'm willing, again, you have who you have. Right. Yep. But I went into this year talking about, I thought Samaj Morgan was used too much as a gadget player. Here's some things you can do where he can be really successful this year. Tyler Morris has shown you where he can be successful. You go back and look at these plays and they're not, the route trees don't make sense. And they're not putting these players in position to do the things they're good at. Again, Donovan Edwards, you put him out wide. He was open deep. We knew that was going to happen at some point. That's why we've been calling for it. Orji didn't make the throw. Fine. Try again. Like, it's there, right? Morris on the crossing route. When you give him time to get up speed, he gets the touchdown for you, right? It's there. Do it. Fred Moore, the one guy that's gotten you separation, you're not playing him. I don't know who Fred Moore pissed off, man. Mm-hmm. I don't understand it one bit. And again, I'm not trying to say anything negative about even a Kendrick Bell. CJ Charleston's a guy I thought brought a lot of experience and could make some plays. Right? Yes, Samaj didn't play this week for those. He was out this week. If you're going to play Kendrick Bell, fine. You think highly of him. Fine. They're clearly telling Joel Klatt that because he mentions it every broadcast. This is a guy they think is going to do it, whatever. Okay, then do it. Throw it. Well,
he's probably asking the same questions we are. Like, what the hell is he doing to deserve all the playing time?
Right. So
that's not a shot at the kid.
No, it's not a shot at him at all. If you're gonna play him that many snaps, then use him. That's my point. Is I want to see some correlation because otherwise, and yeah, David, we brought that up, but could it be blocking? Again, I'll show this.
It's a bunch of stuff. It's like it's
there's no clear separation here, though. Like again, the way it grades out, Kendrick Bell grades out again. Whatever you think of it. Do I think he's the worst run blocking receiver? I don't know. Probably not. That's how it's showing up here. But there's clearly not enough separation one way or the other. That's my point. It's not like, man, every time Kendrick Bell is out there on a running play, do I see him putting somebody on the ground? Right? That's not what's happening in these highlights, right? CJ Charleston, I'm watching replays, the Mullings long runs, he's in motion. I'm seeing him make those blocks. That sticks out to me a little bit. O'Leary's a guy who's gotten downfield and made some blocks. That sticks out to me. Morris isn't a bad blocker. Samaj Morgan's not a bad blocker. Fred Moore is not a bad blocker. I think Fred Moore, Henry, thank you. I think Fred Moore is this team's best wide receiver. and he has the lowest amount of snaps.
Right.
So that's where it's like, ugh. And in the context again, what the quarterback's gonna do, I don't know. I do see some promise though. Some of the play calling and stuff, like I said, there was some where it's like, okay, but when we start thinking about Washington, like you said, road test, right? They were kind of going back and forth in the comments there about there's nobody on the schedule that can't beat Michigan. Northwestern's maybe the one, but like Illinois is better than we thought they'd be. Mr. Kurt Spaghetti, I mean, God, that dude talks a lot of smack. He's backing it up. Indiana's playing great football right now. That looks like it's going to be a tougher game, right? You still have Oregon. You still have Ohio State. What needs to happen where 8-4, 9-3 it is still out there? Because the fear, I didn't even bring up Michigan State. The thought of losing that game, it's just catastrophic, man.
This is what I'm not trying to call out Borge here. I think he's a valuable member of our conversation and all that stuff. But like when it comes to the record, we're talking about, I see all these comments about the record, 7-5 is the ceiling, 6-6 or whatever. If we played USC on the road, his comment here, if we played, we'd have lost that too. Well, if my grandma had wheels, she'd be a bike.
No, don't take that. That's not your joke.
Like, I'm not taking it. If my grandma had wheels, she'd be a bike. Like,
I love that video so much.
I know. I use that all the time. It's funny.
Chicken carbonara.
Yeah, I'm not stealing that joke. It's true.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
My grandma had wheels. She would be a bike. If Michigan didn't score on that 4th down play last week, they would have lost the game. Yeah. If it doesn't matter. If it doesn't matter, you got to let this stuff play out. Like it's look, I can understand the angst and the frustrations and stuff, but it's like, man, it doesn't matter if Michigan would have lost on the road to USC. They didn't go on the road to USC this year. They didn't lose to USC this year.
So I like taking the more positive approach. As negative as we're being, they're ranked number 10 in the country and 4-1 right now.
Right, exactly.
I'd rather have that problem.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So look, the first road test this week is a big, big test. It was always going to be a big test. I don't care if Washington was undefeated. Like, the big thing is now is for Michigan to prove, like, as Account 22 just mentioned, I was just about to mention it, defense travels always. Can this Michigan offense travel? I don't know. Because which was going to back to the original point I was going to make before I went off on a tangent. This offense isn't designed to be in a shootout. It's never going to be it's never going to be successful in a shootout. So that's kind of the thing is, the big factor in this remaining games is can Michigan get into the weeds, get into the nitty gritty with these teams that aren't that. Washington isn't it's a finesse football team that passes the ball a ton. So, obviously you want Will Johnson back for that one. I think if you can get the remaining teams on this schedule out of their element a little bit, Illinois notwithstanding, Oregon notwithstanding, Ohio State notwithstanding, I think Michigan has a shot to win a lot of these games because they have the personnel, they have the tools to take these teams out of their element. And that's what Michigan has done so well these last couple of years is that they've really taken the game away and made teams play games that they don't want to play. Like the finesse teams, they don't want to play physical. They don't want to, beat you in the trenches. And Michigan forces you to do that. And Michigan is still prepared to do that. They have the pieces to make you play physical, make you play in the trenches. It might not be as effective as it was, but with this defense that Michigan has, I still think is a pretty good defense, no matter, what these past second halves have looked like the last 2 weeks. And when you get back, the likes of Josiah Stewart and Will Johnson back into the fold, I think, the defense travels. So, yeah, there's a lot to like. There are paths to victory for Michigan every week. Like, yes, even Oregon, yes, even Ohio State. There are ways to win. So, like, to sit here and say, maybe they do go 7-5. Maybe they just win 3 more games the rest of the way. But man, to sit here and definitively say, like, oh, this team is 7-5, this team is 6-6. We don't even. That's just like doomsday stuff. You got to at least have a little bit of faith that this team knows what they're doing. I mean, like,
well, it's just more fun to talk about what could happen too than just assure ourselves of the negative, I guess. But Brock, what is it? Well, you haven't talked in a while. I'm sure you have some thoughts in your head you were going to spit out anyway, or no?
No, not particularly.
Okay. I kind of want to connect dots here and circle back real quick, though. Just the receiver thing with the offense. I've talked about some good things we've seen. This is the kind of stuff that drives me crazy that I think has to go away, right? 3rd and 9, no extra protection, 4 wide. I don't necessarily care who's out there, fine. Only pass pro is the running back that's out there. But you run 4 verts, basically. And the running back takes off, settles in for a check down. Now, this is what we thought we could get with Orji. The scramble for the first down.
That's what he does.
Yep. Right? So it's weird because I'm like, hey, I want more of that. Because people are starting to say, oh, he's not a good runner. You can tell that he's still trying to process too much. He's not playing loose. He's not comfortable back there. It's only a second start. Because with some of his runs, he's hesitant, I'd like to see more designed runs for him. And I don't mean a delayed handoff up the middle. I don't know if those reads are actual reads, which they better be, because that's the whole reason you're playing him, right? Are we still in a JJ situation where we're running RPO reads, but he's not actually allowed to keep the ball? I hope not. Because then again, what's the point, right? But I'm just looking at, pressure is going to get home. Because it has been all year, right? Especially, look, right side, Link's guy comes around, gets the pressure off the middle, he runs. But, like, look at these routes.
It almost looks like that's like a designed run, but just very delayed, like a delayed.
Well, yeah, because everybody clears out.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. I feel you're either running all your receivers to the sticks and then they're crowded in coverage, or, I mean, I can't tell if that's Klein or Loveland that runs a little bit of it's Klein, runs a little bit of a post. But other than that, everyone's 20 or 30 yards downfield. He hasn't completed a single ball more than 20 yards this season in those first 2 games. This was one of the more concerning stats I had on him. I think there's some positives, but one of the more concerning, hold on, let me find it. Sorry. What is he, 2 of 13? Yeah, 2 of 13 through 2 games on throws 10 yards or more.
Yeah.
Yikes. Oh. Right? So what are you doing? Or at that point, tell him, I've always hated this on 3rd and long. Throw a deep shot. If they pick it, so what?
Yeah.
You're going to punt it anyway. Maybe you get a pass interference call, which happens all the time on those deep throws. Or maybe you let receivers go up and make a play, God forbid. We never throw 50-50 balls, ever. Love watching Nico Collins becoming a top 5 receiver in the league, right? Like, throw a deep ball. Fine. Tell him to let him chuck it. Whatever. He scrambled. That's a good thing. I think you need to see more of that, better use of him as a runner. But again, I'm just like, where was he supposed to throw that ball? You get him no protection. The pressure's getting home because it does on every single 3rd and long. All the guys are covered. Yes, he can run. Great. But yeah, the reads part of it too. The pass to Morris was kind of like a fake RPO. We'll never know what's legit or not. I haven't charted it all, but I've seen some people have said, look, if he is allowed to make reads, he's been really bad at it. Right. He's missed a lot of keeps. So that'd be a good question to ask. Hey, are we actually letting Orji make decisions back there as a runner? Because if not, I mean, I get it. Warren was throwing the interceptions.
I don't think he can make decisions on his own yet either, because he's still trying to figure
Yeah,
out everything.
process
He's got so
everything.
much going on in his head that he's trying to like diagnose a defense. He's just not at that level where everything just comes naturally to him yet, because everything is just going in his head. So
Yeah.
I don't know if he can even make his own decisions. I don't know. I mean, look,
But again, you simplified it for JJ. How many bootlegs did we say? This was a massive, massive play with JJ. Brock, I feel like you and I talked about this a lot with play action stuff. Play action bootleg. JJ goes out wide. He has two options, levels. The shorter check down, and then the other guy above him deeper. And if neither one was there, if the defender stayed back, then he would scramble.
Yep.
Like, what? If you're going to call JJ plays, that's the play you call. Throw it to one of those guys that are open. I've cut the field in half for you. Your only two options are right in front of you. Is one of them open? Throw it. Great. If they're not, run it.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's trying to figure out this offense is really hard. And I don't know. It's obviously there's frustration. It's not going well. I mean, you pointed out earlier, Trevor, the only sustained drive that ended in a touchdown was the first one of the game. Wasn't that right? The
first one
went for
and then
13 plays and 79 yards or something.
Field goal. Yeah, the first play was 9 for 79 and a touchdown. The longest drive of the game, 7 minutes, 24 third quarter. It was 13 plays for 40. That ended in the field goal to start the third quarter.
Yeah.
But again, that's where it feels like the pick just changed everything.
Yep.
Yeah,
you know, and
that
was a Harbaugh thing too. Can we stop pretending that like as soon as a turnover came, Harbaugh didn't get conservative at the end of games and try to escape with victories?
Yeah.
Right. Like that they've always done that, as frustrating as it is, but
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. The interception almost immediately followed by the hands to the face penalty was maybe not immediately followed, but those were the two big plays, because then obviously Minnesota scored right after Mason Graham's penalty.
I think it was on that drive though. Yeah, the fourth down stop with the hands to the face. But again, Minnesota thinks they got robbed. Every team thinks there's plays that move the game one way or the other. I mean, you can do that.
And the JJ talk, like, yeah, I mean, that's like comparing JJ to whatever ref or sorry, I was reading the comment. whatever quarterback Michigan has. It's not JJ. People don't understand. JJ was elite at third down on third downs.
Yeah, like unfathomable.
Inhuman on third downs. Like, that's not easily replicated. So, the next guy up has the unfortunate privilege of following up JJ, but he's also not JJ, and he's also not on JJ's level to where he can, I mean, the very first drive JJ had as a player, like, he threw that like cross-body bomb to I can't remember his name. I can't off the top of my head.
Baldwin?
Yeah, against Western.
Yeah, against Western.
Yeah, Dalen Baldwin.
Yeah, threw that bomb, crossbody bomb to Baldwin. It's like that. Michigan just doesn't have that quarterback on.
Well, and that's why we talked about how crucial Kalel Mullings was on early downs. You don't have the get out of jail free card on third and longs anymore. You need second and manageable so you can open up the playbook a little bit. You need the third and shorts. That play action pass that we showed earlier that we said was maybe Orji's best, that's on first down.
Yep.
Right? Props calling that, in a run situation. We knew whoever the quarterback was, they weren't going to be JJ. But I think the argument that still exists, at least in my mind, is you never used this offense to the potential JJ had anyway, right? Like, you can win. I don't want to say with the JJ offense, but I mean, you can win without having an unbelievable passing attack. We know that, right? Listen to this, okay? 60 yards, no touchdowns. 141 yards, no touchdowns and a pick. 148 yards, one touchdown. 147 yards, no touchdowns. This one's the outlier, 221-3, but 140 yards, no touchdowns. That was Michigan's last 6 games last year for J.J. McCarthy. 60 against Penn State, 141 Maryland, 148 Ohio State, 147 Iowa. Bama's the outlier, 221-3 touchdowns, 140 yards, no touchdowns against Washington, right? Like, that's been the Michigan formula, but he only had 1 turnover in all those games. Michigan turned the ball over a ton. You didn't have the dumb penalties. You were running the ball well. Look, we've seen the running game come. We've seen the defense turn the ball over. I mean, the pick 6 is obviously Will Johnson breaks the record at this point. We're seeing the defense giving him the short field. As much as we've complained about stuff, it also kind of feels like if the offense can sustain a few drives, they're not that far off.
No.
If everything else keeps getting better, which you have to think it will, right? Winks made the adjustments. The defensive stuff, again, feels coachable. Special teams has been pretty good. Punting's been a little inconsistent from Doman, which is kind of a surprise. But special teams ranks really high in a lot of categories. You're running the ball well, blah, blah, blah. You think the O-line's going to get better. Man, find another 100 yards for Orji and a couple third down conversions. You can make this work. That's a formula that, look, are you going to win the rest of your games? What if we win out, huh? No, probably not. But hey, maybe we're back to talking about 9-3 and sneaking into a playoff. If you, can
people make jokes all the time, like especially after Saturday, like, "Oh, we're Iowa." Well, I mean, Iowa. If Michigan can be a better Iowa,
I'll take that.
They'll be fine. They'll be fine this year. I'm talking about this year only. They that's being Iowa is not bad, not a bad thing, especially if you're talking about the entire team. I mean, elite defense still has an elite defense. Every year, if Michigan can just be a better Iowa, they can still win games. So, look, it's just kind of where we're at. I mean, people just have to adjust expectations accordingly. Michigan just needs a above average game manager to be successful. Oh, I mean, at this point, I think they take average.
Yeah.
So, man, I look, I just, I don't know what the magic recipe is. Like, there's obviously no magic wand that people can wave and, have this thing be fixed. You just have to hope that from week to week, you see improvements. And
this is what I'm talking about. My God, this revisionist history.
Well, yeah, and first
John O'Corn over Orji.
Spell his last name right too.
John O'Corn threw 2 touchdowns and 6 picks in 2017. He completed half his throws. He was sacked more times than he scrambled. Like, come on, guys.
There is a path for this team to be successful. There is.
Stephen Dreet reference. Let's go.
Stephen Dreet. Hey, he beat Wisconsin that one time with that miraculous 50-yard scramble that will never be replicated.
Oh, that's right. Remember when
the lone highlight of that 2008 year was that like limp that he had to the 50-yard ridiculous. They just need, like, at this point, like, I don't, just dumb it down. I mean, dumb it down and see what happens. It's a young team that is still figuring its shit out. And you've seen this is not the same team we saw week 1 to now. It is not the same team. I think it's a better version of this team. Absolutely. And you kind of have to your hope is that week 5 to week 10, we're talking about an improved team from here on out. And every week there are little pieces that get better. And it's kind of one of those things we talked about last week where, it's like one side of the ball is going faster than the other. And it's like kind of like this and switching lanes. Eventually these guys they're going to meet at one spot and they're going to walk in unison here. I don't know when that's going to be. It could be the bowl game where that happens. Who knows? But you're going to see eventual growth from week to week. And the punters here, what a great name. If that's your last name, that's a great last name. The punters.
Sounds like a bad sitcom.
Growing little football secret. Growing pains can be painful. Yes, it's gonna be tough to watch a team learning and figuring it out. But guess what? I mean, it's a lot better when they're 4-1 compared to
Michigan.
Like 2-2.
Michigan's got one of the toughest schedules to start the year with Texas and USC. And I mean, that's an interesting point. And we kind of talked a little bit about this. Will be kind of the last thing we wrap up here, Brock, and then just some thoughts looking ahead to Washington. But we kind of talked about that. Like, this team gets better every single week. What's sick? Oh, the ratings in Iowa would be fantastic. Yeah.
Charts.
But I mean, they've had a tougher schedule. They've had to deal with the changeover in the staff. They've had to deal with a lot of roster turnover. It's been kind of easy to expose how behind they are. And then again, the issue with the late decision at quarterback to go with Warren, and then the eventual change back. I'm of the opinion, and this is again kind of final point here. Get healthy enough this week. You beat Washington. You've got to bye. Yeah. You're 5-1. You get healthy, and to your point, Brock, earlier, you come back and you find a way to be 7-1 going to Oregon.
Yep.
And now, okay, it's November. We got to be playing our best football.
Yeah. I mean,
can they do that?
It goes back to what I said earlier. If this team can win ugly, it's still a win. Obviously, if they keep winning in the fashion that they have been, a lot of people will keep complaining about the offense and things like that. But if this team wins ugly or wins pretty, I don't care what it looks like.
Yeah.
You go into Washington, you beat Washington. This is a team where I understand it's a completely different Washington team than what Michigan played just 8 months ago. But I think there's something in the mind for players where you can go into this game with a lot of confidence, knowing that you handled these guys. You beat them by 3 touchdowns in the national championship game, and it's not the same team. This team is not what the Huskies were last year. It's a winnable game. I know it's on the road, but you go in there, you win that game, and then, like you said, Trevor, you just got to find ways to win, and you got to lean on your defense. And if you can pick up a few more third downs a game, and maybe just a small growth in the passing game, this team can surprise people. And I understand the frustration where, Alex Orji's not the dual threat passer and runner that a lot of people thought he would be, and the offense isn't really competent at this point. But Michigan's schedule is set up to where if it's 7-1 going into that Oregon game, you're looking I don't care if every game is a 1-point win. If this team is 7-1 going into Oregon, they're going to be a borderline top 5 team. Mm-hmm. And if let's say they lose to Oregon and Ohio State, I looked at the AP poll today, or maybe it was the coaches poll, but Texas, Oregon, and Ohio State are all in the top 6 of the coaches poll.
Mm-hmm.
2, 3, and 4.
I think so.
Mm-hmm. That sounds about right. Yeah.
Listen, if Michigan can take care of business against the teams it's supposed to beat, and finishes Oregon the year, let's say 9-3 with losses to Texas, Oregon, and Ohio State.
You were right, Brock.
Then, yeah, you've got a path to the playoff, and I know that sounds crazy, but Michigan doesn't need to grow exponentially in any of these areas. Just keep doing what you're doing. You'll get better every week. The defense will get better. The passing game will get better. And I'm more optimistic than I think a lot of people are, because Michigan has the formula to beat a lot of these teams.
And Josh, on the final note here, kind of with more of the context I wanted to frame the whole show, and I didn't really. The reason I put not satisfied, what was a good thing to me was following this game, Sherrone Moore was mad, right? And he said this wasn't good enough. He wasn't doing the hey, I thought we really fought hard and I liked what the offense did. Yeah, we got a few things to work on. Like, he wasn't taking that angle anymore, right? He said, no, this isn't good enough, right? We're not satisfied with this. Kalel Mullings, right, who's been arguably your best player at offense, Loveland's there too, obviously, said the same thing. Like, nah. When the little brown jug came out, a lot of guys didn't even look like they wanted to celebrate. Good.
Yeah.
Right? Good.
Yep.
That's where some of my optimism is coming from too now, where I felt like some of the criticisms and some of the things we were seeing that we were talking about were obvious to everyone else, and we hope everyone else sees it. And it felt like maybe the coaching staff, whether it was coach speech, whatever it might be, was there. Now they're acknowledging it. And I like that. I mean, that makes, to me, they're saying this is a problem and it's not good enough. That's all you can ask for, right? What are you mad about?
Yeah. Oh, just never mind.
I'm guessing the Illinois Indiana thing, we've already talked about that. We went through.
Stop being soft. Stop being soft. Jesus, have a little faith. My God, soft. Don't be so soft. Don't be Ohio State. Don't be soft.
I was waiting for the toilet paper roll.
Indiana. Well, let's see Indiana beat anyone worth a damn first before I start shitting my pants about them. Come on. Don't be soft. Jesus.
That's what
if they haven't earned it. They're 4-1. Who cares? My God. I don't want to call it. Jesus. Oh. Holy crap, people. Like, oh my God. Unbelievable. Like, who gives a shit if Indiana's 5-0? They've beaten the Church of the School of the Blind and UCLA, and they beat a crap Maryland team.
I will say,
crap Maryland team.
When he said what he said at Big Ten Media Days, Kurt Spaghetti,
Jesus.
about we're gonna go in that old ass stadium or whatever, I was like, bro, that's the Rose Bowl. What are you doing? And it just went in there. And I mean, UCLA's bad. UCLA's bad. But I was like, all right. I mean, oh, so funny. Yeah, I don't know. I'm willing to say Indiana's better than we thought they would be at the end of the year, but I'm not going to go week to week scared of every team on this schedule.
If you're going to piss your pants, like at least wear a diaper. I mean, this football is not for you. If you're going to piss your pants every week and let little piss dribbles down your leg, don't watch football because it's not the sport for you. Just don't do that. Like, my God.
Oh, we haven't had this version of you in a while. I love it.
It's just so stupid. It's so stupid.
What rhymes with Hoosier? Loser. I like that. That's funny. That's great. Okay, real quick. Washington's basically a pick'em game, depending on what betting service you look at. I haven't gotten into the analytics too much on it yet. Is it more of the same? I mean, it goes on the road. Do they come out flat? If you don't have a score prediction yet, that's fine. We obviously post that Friday. We got to look at it. I've had this as a win for a while. It's a night game. It's at Washington. I don't love that. To Brock's point, I think there's a little extra chip. They beat this team already.
Shit.
Washington has their own struggles. I mean, they just lost to Rutgers, right? I think I like where Michigan's head's at coming out of this Minnesota win. I like that they barely won and they're not happy with it. I think this might be one of their better games. If it was at home, I'd feel better. I get it. But I think with the bye coming up and hopefully some health, I mean, I want to see Stewart and Will back, ideally. Loveland hopefully take another leap in his health. Obviously, it was like every catch he made, he was off the field. I think I said 14, 15 snaps, whatever. But I think this will be one of Michigan's better games. I think they can win 30-17, something like that.
Yeah, I was going to predict Michigan 27-17-ish. I haven't seen enough from Washington yet to make me kind of Washington, there is a realistic scenario where Washington can win this game, but I just don't know if they have the goods to beat Michigan, especially dominate them. With their dominate Michigan's defense. I think they're going to come to play. It's going to be I think it's going to be another ugly game. I mean, they're just going to have to do this for a while until they can kind of figure it out, So, I think they had 50 transfers or something like that, 50, 55 transfers in. I think that I think that makes a difference here too.
What Michigan went through times 100.
Yeah.
Because DeBoer brought players with them. Washington went pro. Fish wasn't able to bring his best Arizona guys with him. They weren't happy with that departure. So,
I mean, as we've mentioned as we mentioned last year, I was just about to mention that too. I was just about to say that 30 is the magic number. If Michigan reaches that 30th, then that's if Michigan reaches it, they're gonna win. If whoever else they play gets to 30, they're gonna lose. So that's that kind of magic.
John, the spread's been one on either side. They said it's basically a pick 'em. But real quick, Brock, before you go, to Josh's point, part of the reason I'm not too worried about this game, Washington scored 35 against Weber State, 30 against Eastern, and the last few weeks they lost to Wazoo 24-19. They beat Northwestern 24-5, and they just lost to Rutgers to 21-18. So I think Michigan's defense is going to be able to do enough that, even if Michigan doesn't take a step offensively, I think they can win this game ugly, like you've talked about. But I feel like I think it's just going to be one of the games where it's a little bit better. It has to be. But Washington, I love Jed Fish, man. I really do. I think he's going to be a good coach there. But as much as Moore is dealing with some turnover, Fish is going to need a couple of years to get that program running again, in my opinion. But
yeah, this is going to be the best defense that Washington has seen, and I just don't think they're going to be able to do enough offensively. Michigan won't do a whole lot offensively either. I do think someone asked if it'll take a defensive score for Michigan to reach 27 or 30 or whatever the number was, but I agree. If they're going to get up that high, huh?
Whatever it takes.
Yeah, that's right. If I don't care if Michigan has 2 defensive touchdowns, if it takes another Will Johnson pick 6 and a.
Sorry, it's weird that people. It's just weird to me that people complain about that. We had short fields. Yeah. Good. Thank you, defense. Who cares? Good.
Yeah. It's football, Sometimes you're going to get help from the defense or special teams like Michigan did yesterday, and I think I can't say I'm going to predict Michigan to get a defensive touchdown on Saturday, but I do think they're going to do enough. Washington's not a big enough threat offensively for me to worry about this one. I think Michigan's going to win by a touchdown, maybe 10 points or so, but it won't be anything more than that because Michigan obviously has troubles offensively. If I had to give a score right now, I'd say something probably like 23-17, 23-14, something in that range.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll have to look into more, but I felt good at the start of the year, and obviously that what we thought we would see versus now hasn't been the same. But I just continue. I was one of the more pessimistic people, I feel like, early on, and I got really mad. I know the show Brock and I did by ourselves, I was just losing my mind over some stuff. So as I continue to see some of the foundational stuff, literally the formations they're running and some of the play calling stuff start to make a little bit more sense, that makes me happy. When I see players improving, which again, I feel dumb having to say this every week. Guys, you don't care more than the players do. I promise you don't. They're more mad than you. They really are. Yep. They're not happy. It's okay. You know what I mean? It's just that whole thing it's just funny to me. You don't care more than they do. So I really liked the response from them Saturday, the not being satisfied. Good. I liked that. I think that's the kind of, and I know why Sharon was doing what he was doing in terms of some of the coach speak stuff and some confidence. But hey, man, you're literally halfway through. How stupid is that? Season's half over next week.
Yeah.
Yep.
Spend 9 months talking about this and then boom, it's gone. Yep. So anyway, stock report. We'll have the offense tomorrow, defense either the same day or the following day. Some more premium content coming in. We've got a couple recruiting things that we are chasing down right now. A Michigan visitor at wide receiver, quick offer turnaround. Also, a couple guys that were down at Bama. They got to see a football game. One of them is already coming back up to Ann Arbor. So we'll have a lot of recruiting talk as that kind of starts to pick up with fall evals and obviously getting into the middle of the season. Basketball, again, is right around the corner.
Can't believe it.
I know. I love it. It's going to, a couple weeks is going to be fun. Basketball kicking off and hopefully football starting to find a groove. But yeah, so make sure, again, every week we got viewers start to finish. Appreciate you guys. A lot of these viewers are also subscribers at michigan.rivals.com. Please head over there. If you haven't joined our community already, give us a shot. You can use promo code BLUE30 to get a month free. And then, yeah, once you're in there, just ask our subscribers what they think. It's been a rough few days. They might be a little bit more negative than they are normally when you ask them. But we do we are proud of the community that's built over there. So if you're a loyal viewer here, we'd love to have you at Maize and Blue Review, michigan.rivals.com. And of course, if you're listening back on podcasts or watching this back on YouTube and you want to be a part of the conversation, make sure you're liking, subscribing, commenting, notification bell so you know when we go live. Hail to the podcast on Sundays. And of course, Dennis's Good Afternoon Michigan Football, soon Michigan Basketball show live during the week, and his post-game live show, which has become our most watched show, which is pretty cool. People love joining in the complaining and misery immediately following the Michigan football game. So make sure you're part of that as well. Otherwise, follow us on Twitter, Trevor McCue, Josh Henschke, Brock Heilig, as always. We'll see you guys next week. Hail to the podcast.